in South Africa, we still face the big challenge, and everybody's speaking about that: access to funding, still access to market, and still access to skills. Even though there are a lot of people doing that already, all right? But there is still a fundamental gap in that. But I also think that, like I think it's Aaron and them who said, 5 years ago things were a lot different. Right now we're sitting in a place where there is opportunity, okay? Because between business and government, there is realization that each one cannot do this alone, okay? And we have to find ways of building partnerships. So business at the moment, I believe, is well poised to be knocked on the door of, all right? To say, listen, we need you to come to the party on some of these things, because business is also changing their model. You find in the past a lot of CSI funding going out into little projects where people didn't have the right skill, and ended up the project was not sustainable, and so they decided to withdraw their funding, okay? But now you're finding they want to start developing or co-developing with farmers, with new entrants in the space. They want to help to co-develop and create shared value. So you're beginning to see a shift also from business, not just in the thinking that I want the product, because the understanding and realization setting in, if I don't take care of the new entrant or the new farmer, there is no product. And my supply chain is not changing, it's remaining relatively white commercial farmer, right? So the thinking around that is changing. Obviously, we're still sitting in challenges around inflation, food prices, everything escalating, fuel prices, which impact the farmers. I know with the coming planting season, those are things that are uppermost in our minds. So we still have to find a way of how to address this, okay? Now, we also know, and I think this is also important for us, so it's good. The whole conversation for today, and I assume tomorrow, is all about agriculture, right? But agriculture is important in our economy. And where we sit right now and the percentage we contribute, we believe can be grown, okay? To just give you a little bit of background, I spent more than 25 years in government. And I mean, I understand the programs of government, and I understand the positioning of agriculture in the economy. So I really think that this is one of the sectors where we have significant potential to grow the job creation in the sector and to grow those who are moving from small growers into commercial space, right? But we need to understand at a strategic level, even as you want to enter the space, you have the passion to enter the space, you need to understand where it sits within the economy, where we as South Africa sit in relation to the rest of the world when we're talking agriculture, when we're talking agribusiness. You need to understand the peripheral or subsidiary kind of businesses that flow out of primary agriculture. So it's not just about planting, putting your seed in the ground and waiting, right? There's a lot of things that actually supplement that farming. So where do you want to position yourself? Do you want to be the primary producer? Do you want to be the input supplier? Do you want to be, and it was lovely to listen to the stories of people setting up their own seed farms and those kinds of things, because those are areas that we have gaps in as well at the moment, right? So I'm not going to spend too much of time. We spoke about technology and a whole lot of other things. Then the question becomes, what is Agda? Who are we and who do I represent? So Agda is the Agricultural Development Agency. It's an initiative that we started up in 2018, and it really was a number of commercial players in agriculture coming together and saying, okay, how do we find a way to support government in terms of creating sustainable opportunities in agriculture, especially with regard to land reform at the time, okay? Because you remember, there's so much of land that's been redistributed or restituted, but a lot of it not under production. So this was where this whole initiative was born, and the president was calling for where are the jobs in the country. So an approach was made to the president by this group of private sector individuals to say, we can come together as from an agricultural private sector side and support you in a way that allows for access to affordable finance, access to skills, and access to market. So that became known as the Agricultural Development Agency, and we positioned under what is called the Public-Private Growth Initiative, which is an initiative that operates across all job creation sectors and links directly with government in terms of supporting them with what can be done. The initiative was led by Mr. Rolf Meyer and the late Mr. Van Zyl from Toyota SA. So it is really bringing together broadly all of the partners in agriculture. We're a not-for-profit organization, and we're a member-based organization as well. Now, our vision really, I've already said it, is really to focus in on supporting access to affordable finance, right? So access to finance is there. Commercial banks, everybody else wants to get involved in the agri sector. The problem is the affordability of that finance, and the problem is whether or not our farmers meet all the criteria in order to access that finance, right? Because I'm sure you see that, all these long forms that have to be filled. Do you have collateral? Do you have security on your land? Do you have all of these? Are you credit worthy? And those become your challenges. So we really wanted to focus on affordable finance. Skills, we believe, is still an area that we have to focus on. In general, not just in agriculture, we have to build skills in our country. And we believe that building agricultural skills will set you up to better perform in running your own enterprises and your own farms, right? And then the other one was access to market. Because I think, like we said, you don't just put a product in the ground or seed in the ground, and then the month before harvest, you're deciding, where am I going to take this product, right? You start from the market, you backward engineer to the product you're putting on the ground, and then you know that you're farming for purpose, not just farming without an idea of where your product's going, okay? That in itself begins to attract people into your opportunity, begins to attract funding into your opportunity. Like I said, we're a member-based organization. Our members are very, very broad. We cover the mega farmers of the country, so many of you would have heard of, like, say, Skuman Boerdery. All the beans you find in your baked beans come from Skuman Boerdery, ZZ2s, all of them, Sarnik Group, who run the big livestock production, all of them are members. But we also have a number of small entrepreneurs, new agri-businesses, communal area farmers, retailers, mining entities, etc., etc. But the key people that we also have is all of the banks. Under the umbrella of the Banking Association, all of the banks are members under Agda, which for us is important because we want them to come and partner with us in how we do the finance. We also have a number of the corporacies, like VKB, Senvest, everybody else. And then we have retailers, even like Woolworths, who are members of us. So we have about 170 odd members. We also have commodity organizations, traditional leaders that are members, the Agba's Chamber that is a member of Agda, and in the commodities we have grains, we have red meat, we have pork, we have citrus, etc. that are members. So it's really a very broad spectrum of partners. The beneficiaries we want to focus on, because the main aim that Agda has is to support the small growers and start moving them up the level into commercialization. So we support from small moving up into commercialization, but we also look at commercial farmers at the moment who are looking at expansion, all right? And we also don't just look at primary production. We look across the agricultural value chain. So I won't spend too much of time on that because I want to move to some of the other areas. But these are all the constraints, right? We've already spoken about them today. I'm not going to go into them, but these are the challenges you are facing. So the question we've been asked ever since we were established, obviously we were hit by COVID, so our capital raise was a bit slower than we wanted it to be, but that's fine, we are now back on track. But we felt that in the country at the moment, private sector is doing certain things, government is doing certain things. We needed to find a way to integrate the two. And Agda is really playing that role of being an integrator. We are not a competitor, not to the private sector partners and not to government, and that is not our intention. So when we do a project or when a project proposal comes to us from our members, we actually work with other members who have the right skill and the implementing capability to implement those transactions. So I'll give you an example. We're doing a very big project out in Limpopo where we're putting together an entire potato vegetable value chain, setting up a hub where they're going to wash and clean and sort the potatoes and pack, as well as for the vegetables. We didn't do that alone. We worked in partnership with the mining sector, with other cooperatives at the moment, big cooperatives in the country, and with the banking sector, as well as commercial partners who have the market access. And we brought all of them together in one place to put that project on the ground. And we worked with the commodity organization, which is Potato SA in that case, right? But what it will do is, it will take 14 potato farmers currently who were farming on just about 200 hectares of land, and over the next 4 years, we'll end up with 54 commercial potato farmers farming on more than 560 hectares of land. We also will take 330 odd vegetable farmers and move them into a proper value chain to the market, right? Which has increased already the income generation for that space. The hub itself will provide a joint kind of service to the farmers in terms of mechanization and everything else, you know. You're looking for a tractor, you don't have to go buy one, you're going to go there and you're going to access it, right? So it's those kinds of models that we implement. So we work across the value chain, and partnership is the key for our model. Right? What we realized is a lot of people are funding agriculture, especially from private sector entities as far as their CSI, ESG, etc., right? But we're creating for them a platform for consolidation of that funding so we can better leverage it, right? If I get 500,000 Rand from a private company, and if I get 10 million Rand or 20 million Rand from 20 different companies, it's a huge difference because I can leverage that 20 million Rand 5 different times to be able to do 100 million Rand worth of transactions. So that's the conversation we are having, and I think Omri and them from Agri Enterprises were speaking on the same kind of thing that we are both looking at and that we are working on some of these together as well, right? So how do we do that? So that we bring together a whole cohort of money that's available and you don't have to knock on 5 different doors to access it, right? Then we are also, as part of, we're an NPO, but we have an investment arm into which our funding flows so that we are able to attract South African money as well as international funding into that fund. So it's a fund that creates almost a blended structure so that when it is on lent to a farmer, it is at a much more affordable kind of model. So this is just talking about everything I've said now for us to all stop working in a silo mentality and begin to work together, co-creating for sustainability, right? And that's what we work on. This, I just want to touch on a little bit. The one thing we've learned, and I think all of us who've been in agriculture for a long time, is that we don't want to go and look at one project in Amatole and then another project in Bloberg, in Limpopo. We want to look at an area-based approach. So when we received proposals, and we've received like proposals when we made our call, our pipeline sits at about 3.4 billion Rand at the moment, right? We're actively working on 1.6 billion of that 3.4 billion pipeline. There are a lot of them commercial transactions, okay? But when they come to us, we also then go and scan and scope the entire area so that we understand within a 100-kilometer radius of this, what is happening. If we help this particular project in terms of expansion on deciduous fruit, what does it do for the rest of the area? Is there a pack house? Is there additional farmers that can be brought in this model so that instead of taking out 10 tons of something, we're able to take out 50 tons and create additional jobs in the space? So we really want to look at an integrated area-based approach. Then we look across the value chain. Like I said, we don't only look at the production, we are supporting people all the way up to even food service businesses, right? Because you need to understand, food service at the moment has a lot of money flowing into it, okay? Let's say your ShopRites and your Woolworths and everybody else, Woolworths has its own packing lines, but ShopRites and Pick n Pays and others, they also take off food that's pre-packed from producers themselves, right? So the food service business needs product for that food to be prepared and sent through. So we support them as entrepreneurs, we support processing, and we support the people on the ground who actually produce the items, right? Then we look at partnerships, like I spoke about, public-private partnerships, and community organizations. So I think someone spoke earlier that when you start a project, you don't just go into the area and assume you know what people want. You need to go into the area, you need to scope, you need to understand what farming activities are happening. How many poultry farmers are there here? How many livestock farmers are there here? How many vegetable farmers? What is the key opportunity? Because sometimes you have to convince people to actually say, listen, what you've been doing for years, that's not going to get you anywhere, all right? Because sometimes people just went in because I love to do this. But I love without a market is not going to help you, okay? So we need to remember those things, okay? I'm sure the farmers will, I hope they're agreeing with me, right? But you need to have a market first, all right? So, and then the other part that we work on is leveraging capital I spoke about for increased impact. But I think for me, the important thing is we need in our country to start moving towards an orchestrated, programmatic approach for agriculture. Or else we are not going to be able to move those margins. We need to open new markets for our farmers, right? You already have big commercial farmers in grains, in livestock, in everything else. So they're not going to always want to give up a portion of their market, right? But the world actually requires a lot more product than we can actually give them at the moment. China, the EU, and everywhere else. So we need to work and say to government, and that's where Agda with PPGI works and saying, let's open up new markets, whether it's South Korea, whether it's the Middle East, who are looking for a lot of halal products, for example, whether it's some other country. How do we get in there and return that back into production by small farmers and new farmers in our country? So that's the idea that we work with, all right? I'm not going to go into this, but this is what I spoke to you about, of co-creating with the people, with the community, with the commercial farmer, right? But the principles that we all need to remember is that even when we're talking to developing new farmers, it's not about just engaging and moving on. You engage, you empower people with the right skill, the knowledge, etc., but you also have to walk a journey if you want people to stay sustainable. And I think, Ellen, with Farm Soil, that's what you're doing. You're not just starting a farmer and moving on. You started someone at 50 hectares, they're now at 1,000 hectares, right? So there's a journey that has to be walked, and that's what Agda does as well. This is our fund, all right? It's about blended finance, partnerships to assist in de-risking the transactions, that's what we do. Syndicated lending, where we bring different banks and financing entities together, because this is a very difficult area. Banks don't want to, by the way, lend in the same project, all right? So at ABSA and a standard don't necessarily want to be on the same project, but sometimes project values are 150 million. You need to bring more than one partner in, right? And then consolidated private sector spend is what I spoke about. All of this on the side, bridging the gap, de-risking, etc. I want to get to this one. This is a besides the commercial transactions we work on, we realized that skills is critical, and we realized we also have to deal with the issue of household food security and the very small grower, especially during the time of COVID, when we find problems in our township areas, right? So we started a program in urban agriculture, which has now gone back into rural as well. So we in 4 different areas in the country. We've partnered with ABSA as well as DBSA more recently, and we're working over the next 4 years to develop a number of households in production, but out of them we then train what we call business unit leaders in NQF level standards, all right, so that they move to the next level of entrepreneurship. And we have a couple who are here with us today, and Tabiseng, Rizani, Charles, Halima, and Obiseng, right? So they are doing well. They started only in their small household garden, but they've expanded, and they're now producing on much larger lands, and now we are going to be aggregating their product into the local supermarkets and the local stores. So we've created an economy for them basically in their particular space, and they are earning an income. But they're also very excited. You'll see them everywhere with the Agda badges. So over the last 18 months, we've done 1,142 such farmers, and 880 of them are still producing, which is a good thing, because often once you train someone and you leave them, they're not producing, right? So we stay and we mentor them, and I can see Duncan already standing up, so I'm going to just skip to the end. Grow to market, this is how we do it, right? Capacitate, produce, aggregate, and supply to the market. But I think just to conclude then, going forward, what we're looking at is investment into agriculture. Consolidated approach to funding from CSI, ESD, etc., food production, processing, and food tech sectors. Programmatic investment approach. Innovation is critical, and I think in the morning a lot of people spoke about that. Impact of what we want to do. Now, here we need to understand also, right, as we do what we do, take consideration of the environment as well. Take consideration that a lot of export countries, the countries we're exporting to, are looking at our farming practices as well. So you need to have that in the back of your mind as you change certain of the things that you do in terms of the way you're farming, so that you comply with some of those standards as well. And then partnerships for us is critical in the entire agri value chain. But if you want to contact us, we have a stand downstairs as well, and we would be happy to engage further. Thank you.